Welcome to Daily Plunge. We're in the Gospel of John, chapter 6, verses 16 through 27. After the feeding of the 5,000, I'm sure it was a really long day, right? The disciples get into the boat and they set off and go off to the other side of the lake. Now, they don't take Jesus with them. We don't know why. It doesn't say in the text. Why didn't he join them? What was more important than being in the boat? I guess if we're going to speculate, which we really shouldn't, but if we were, probably was a time of prayer, right? Time of being quiet with the Lord. Now, it says, by dark, as Jesus hadn't joined them, verse 18, a strong wind was blowing and the waters grew rough. There's waves coming up, and they had rowed about 3 or 4 miles, and that's a lot of tough work, right? They see Jesus approaching the boat, walking on the water. And you have to imagine that, as it says in the other Gospels, that they probably at first didn't know what they were seeing. And so they were frightened. And what is Jesus' response? He says, "It is I, don't be afraid." Now, the Greek, "it is I," is a form of when Jesus says, "I am." In the Greek, it is ego, eimi. This is eimi, ego. Same thing. It's sort of a God statement here. And then they're willing. It says they're willing to take him into the boat. And immediately they reach the shore, and it begs the question, are we willing to have Jesus in our boat? Right? I mean, how often are we on rough waves, having the wind blow against us? And when Jesus approaches us, are we willing to have him come to us? Are we willing to have him speak to us? And I can tell you in my own life, there have been plenty of times when I've not been willing to have Jesus get into the boat with me. And I know as a pastor, there are lots of people who are very unwilling, and they're going through horrendous storms, and they're not willing to have Jesus get into the boat. They're more afraid of Jesus than they are of the storm. And I want you to think about that. Are you more afraid of Jesus and what he will do in your life than you are the storm? We keep trying to row ourselves. We keep trying to save ourselves. And in the midst of the storm, I want you to hear this. In the midst of the storm is when Jesus says, "It is I, don't be afraid." In the midst of those times when we're in the roughest waters, when the winds are blowing across against us the strongest, Jesus is saying, "It is I." Now they get to the other side, and the next day the crowd is like, "Oh my gosh, Jesus forgot us." And they go running over around the lake to go find Jesus. And they're like, "Hey, Jesus, you forgot us. How'd you get here?" And Jesus says, "The only reason you're coming after me is because you saw the sign, but you didn't understand it. You've come to make me a political leader, a pawn really for yourself. You're more concerned about politics and economics than you are about real life." And he says, "Do not work for the food that spoils, that has an expiration date on it, but rather work for that food, that bread that gives eternal life, which the Son of Man will give to you, because on him God has placed his seal of approval." Well, thanks, friends. Have a blessed day.